All right, so we're going to take a deep dive into some pretty significant changes coming to the H-2B visa program.
Yeah.
Effective January 17th, 2025.
Huge changes.
Big changes.
Yeah.
So if you are following this, if you're an employer who uses H-2B visas, or if you are someone who works under this visa program, this is going to be super important for you to understand what's coming down the pipeline.
Absolutely.
And we've got the source material right here from the Department of Homeland Security. And I've got to say, some of these changes are pretty surprising. I did not see these coming.
Yeah. When you look at the impact this could have on so many different industries, even global labor markets. I mean, this is big.
Yeah.
This is much bigger than just a few tweaks to the program.
Right. Like, just to start off with getting rid of the list of eligible countries, that's massive.
Right?
So suddenly employers can look anywhere in the world for these temporary workers. I mean, think about the implications for industries that are having trouble filling positions, especially the ones that rely a lot on seasonal labor.
Oh, absolutely.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
I mean, you think about the impact on hospitality or construction.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, they could suddenly have access to a much larger pool of workers. But on the other hand, what's this going to do to wages? Will this lead to more competitive wages? Or will it actually drive them down? It's a really interesting question.
And what about workers who are already here on H-2B visas? How's this going to impact them?
Yeah. Well, I think that's where some of these other changes come into play. The increased worker flexibility is something we really need to dig into, because this new portability thing where workers can start a new job as soon as the new employer files that petition.
Right.
Without even waiting for approval.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be a game changer.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, the one that really struck me was the removal of the interrupted stay rules.
Oh, yeah.
So before, if you went home for a visit, it could really jeopardize your ability to come back and work in the U.S. Now they have so much more freedom to travel without that hanging over their heads.
Right? It's like the whole program is changing its view on how workers can move around. And it raises so many questions about what that could mean for seasonal labor patterns.
Yeah.
Are we going to see more workers moving around between different regions or different industries throughout the year?
Yeah.
How is this going to affect employers who really rely on a consistent workforce for certain seasons? I mean, there are a lot of unknowns here.
And the grace periods are a lot longer now, too. Workers get 10 days before a job starts, a whole month after their visa expires to figure things out, plus 60 days if their petition gets revoked. So it's a lot more time.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to take into account the real challenges these workers face. Give them a little breathing room to transition between jobs.
Right.
I think this could have a big impact on their sense of security and stability,
Yeah.
knowing that they have more time to handle these changes.
And then there's the thing about pursuing permanent residency while you're on an H-2B visa.
Oh, right.
Like, that opens some pretty big doors for people who want to build a life here in the U.S. It's almost like a pathway to a whole different kind of future.
It really is.
Yeah.
But, it also makes you wonder how that's going to interact with the existing pathways to residency and just the whole immigration landscape in general.
Yeah.
Could this shift the demographics of permanent residents in the U.S.? What about the demand for H-2B visas in the long term? I mean, these are questions we need to be asking.
So we've got these massive changes for employers and for workers.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's a lot of potential for things to play out in ways that we haven't even thought of yet.
Oh, absolutely. And we haven't even gotten to the new compliance measures yet.
Right.
That's where things get really interesting, because now you're talking about protecting workers and legitimate businesses.
Yeah, let's get into that, because from what I've seen, the Department of Homeland Security is not messing around when it comes to cracking down on bad actors.
Not at all.
Oh.
Yeah, they're sending a pretty clear message with these new criteria for denying petitions.
Yeah.
Like that zero tolerance policy for employers who collect fees from the workers.
Right.
I mean, that's a direct hit at something that's become way too common, unfortunately.
Yeah, it feels like they're really trying to address that power imbalance that can happen in those situations and trying to level the playing field a bit. But how effective can they really be in enforcing that?
Right. Well, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, they're talking about more site visits and stricter requirements for cooperating with USCIS compliance reviews.
Right.
But it all comes down to resources and follow-through at the end of the day.
Yeah. And what about the workers themselves? I mean, do they actually have any power to speak up if they see violations happening?
Well, that's where those whistleblower protections are supposed to come in.
Right.
So by protecting workers who report violations from retaliation, they're hoping to give those workers the confidence to come forward.
Right.
without being afraid of losing their jobs or facing other negative consequences.
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to create a system where workers are actually participating in making sure things are fair.
Exactly.
Not just, passively accepting whatever conditions are thrown at them.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how that actually plays out in practice.
Yeah.
Will workers feel safe enough to actually come forward? Will there be enough support to help them through the process and protect their rights?
Right.
Those are all things we'll need to keep an eye on.
Okay, so we've got all these changes that seem like they're meant to create a fairer system.
Yeah.
But what about unintended consequences? Could these regulations accidentally create loopholes that bad employers could take advantage of?
Oh, for sure. That's always a risk. Look at this increased portability.
Right.
It gives workers more freedom.
Right.
But it also makes them more vulnerable if they're constantly moving between employers.
Yeah.
How do you make sure they're not being pressured into accepting bad conditions just to keep a job?
Right. Right. And what about the broader labor market? Could an influx of H-2B workers lead to more competition for jobs and push wages down, not just for foreign workers, but for American workers in those same fields?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's really complicated. There's no easy answer.
Yeah.
We need to watch the data really closely and see what happens over time, both for the workers looking for jobs and the employers trying to fill those positions.
And the timing of all this is interesting, too.
Yeah.
Just days before a new president takes office.
Right.
What if they have totally different ideas about immigration policy?
Could all of this be reversed? Could it be changed? Absolutely. New administrations, they come in, they like to shake things up, especially with something like immigration that's so politically charged.
Right.
We got to keep up with any potential changes in their approach.
So it feels like we're standing on the edge of a major shift in how this H-2B program works.
Yeah.
But the final outcome is still a big question mark. There are so many moving parts here, and the effects could be felt across so many different industries and communities.
It really is. It's like looking at a tiny piece of a much bigger puzzle.
Yeah.
This whole conversation about globalization and labor markets and how immigration is changing our societies, it's all connected.
It's a good reminder that these issues are all intertwined.
Absolutely.
And if we want to address them, we need to consider everyone involved.
Yeah. We need to be open to different perspectives and look at the evidence as it comes in.
We've covered a lot today trying to untangle all these changes to the H-2B program.
We have.
And before we go, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay, I'm listening.
So we've talked about the goals of these changes.
Right. More flexibility for workers.
Yeah.
A wider pool of talent. For employers, stronger enforcement to prevent abuse.
Exactly. But what about the things we haven't even thought of yet?
The unintended consequences.
Exactly. What unexpected things could happen? How could this impact businesses and workers in ways we haven't even imagined?
I like that line of thinking. For example, what might happen to rural communities that really depend on H-2B workers? Will this create more opportunities or just make existing problems worse?
And how will this affect the relationship between the U.S. and the countries sending these workers?
Yeah.
Could it lead to better cooperation, or could it create new tensions?
Good questions.
These are things we'll need to keep watching as these new rules go into effect and everything starts changing. It's a complex situation, and we're just starting to see the bigger picture.
Yeah, it really is like we've started this chain reaction, and now we're just watching to see what happens.
Yeah.
We can't predict exactly how it's all going to play out.
Yeah.
But I think it's safe to say things are going to get interesting.
Oh, definitely. Just look at the potential impact on certain industries.
Yeah.
Like the hospitality industry. They've always relied so much on H-2B workers.
That's right.
This could really change their workforce and even their labor costs.
Yeah. And what about industries that are really seasonal, like agriculture or landscaping?
Right.
Could we see more workers moving around between regions or different sectors depending on the time of year? It's possible. And then you have to think about how employers are going to adapt.
Yeah.
Will they have to offer higher wages or better benefits to attract and keep workers in this new environment?
We've also talked about the potential effects on wages and competition for jobs.
Right.
How do we make sure there are opportunities for foreign workers, but also protect American workers in those same fields?
It's a tough balance to strike. We really need good data to see what's actually happening to different groups of workers.
Data will be key, but we can't forget about the human side of this, too.
Of course.
What about the cultural and social impacts of a more diverse workforce?
Right. When you have more workers coming from different countries, it can bring new perspectives and cultural exchanges.
Yeah.
But there could also be challenges like language barriers and making sure everyone feels welcome and included.
Right. And are communities even ready for a potential increase in H-2B workers?
Yeah.
Do they have enough housing and transportation and support services for a growing population?
That's something that often gets overlooked when we talk about immigration. We need to make sure communities have the resources to handle these changes and create welcoming environments.
It seems like these changes to the H-2B program could have ripple effects that go way beyond just employment.
Absolutely.
We're talking about demographics, labor markets, communities, even international relations.
It's all connected. It reminds us that immigration policy isn't just about numbers and rules.
Right.
It's about people's lives, their hopes and dreams, and what they contribute to our society.
I think we've really dug into some complex issues today.
Yeah, we have.
And I hope this deep dive has helped our listeners understand the potential impacts of these H-2B changes. But it's important to remember that this is just the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
The full effects will take time to unfold, so we need to stay informed, keep talking about it, and consider everyone's perspectives.
Couldn't agree more. The H-2B program is just one example of the bigger conversations happening around the world about globalization labor and how countries interact with each other. It's something we need to keep paying attention to.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep exploring this issue. There's always more to discover, and your thoughts and ideas are important to this conversation.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep diving deep.